Hello, everybody. Welcome into another edition of Pigskin and Burnt Ends, your Texas college football podcast. Coming at you live from the FanStream Sports Studios in Dallas. Welcome into the program. Welcome into the show that can be seen over on the FanStream Sports Dallas YouTube channel. And welcome into the College Gridiron Coast to Coast Network for another week of Texas college football talk. It's the Texas Longhorns. It's the TCU Horned Frogs. We've got Texas Tech Talk, SMU Mustangs, and of course, the North Texas Mean Green. And of course, we can't forget those Texas A&M Aggies who are rolling through the SEC in the non-conference schedule. But first, we need to remind everybody that this episode of Pigskin and Burnt Ends is sponsored in part by Ticket Smarter. The 2025 college football season is here, and we know you're looking for the best seats at the most competitive prices. And we want to make sure you take advantage of Ticket Smarter and their mobile app. We know now more than ever that buying college football tickets online requires trust. And Ticket Smarter has partnered with more than 100 universities and 24 conferences as their official ticket resale marketplace. They've also partnered with ESPN Events as an official ticket resale partner as well. Purchase your tickets quickly, securely, and at the best prices on the secondary market with the Ticket Smarter mobile app or at ticketsmarter.com. So we've got two great offers for our listeners today. You can save $10 on your purchase of $100 or more on Ticket Smarter by using the code LWOS10. And if you spend more, you can save more, because if you spend $300 or more and use the promo code LWOS20, you'll save $20 off your purchase. And these codes aren't just one-time offers. You can use these codes over and over again all season and save for the best selection of seats to this year's biggest games. Don't wait. Get the best selection and pricing now with Ticket Smarter. And remember our codes, LWOS10 and LWOS20. Think smarter, Ticket Smarter. Thank you, Ticket Smarter. As always, appreciate very, very much their support. But, you know, it was a weird, wacky week in Texas-based college football this week. You had some unbeatens rolling into their games with different expectations, maybe different goals. But we had, of course, Texas A&M unbeaten. We had the North Texas Mean Green unbeaten, and then we had some other teams, of course, here around the state that are having good seasons, but didn't know what to really expect rolling into their games. TCU, SMU, Baylor. Of course, don't want to leave out Texas Tech as the unbeatens as well. We're going to get into a lot of Texas Tech talk. Let's talk about the teams, though, that did not fare very well. And we'll start with the TCU Horned Frogs, as their high-flying offense was grounded by Kansas State's defense in a 41-28 stunner. As for the second straight week, the TCU Horned Frogs found their rhythm too late in the game. Despite a monster performance from quarterback Josh Hoover, the Frogs fell 41-28 to K-State on Saturday afternoon. What did them in? Turnovers and a relentless Wildcats defense that scored twice. So Hoover put up some big numbers, completing 26 of 47 passes for 376 yards and 3 touchdowns. But he also threw 2 critical interceptions to Des Purnell, including a 25-yard pick six early in the third quarter that broke the game wide open. K-State capitalized on nearly every mistake, turning defensive chaos into points and therefore momentum. After Hoover's first half backward pass was ruled a fumble and returned for a touchdown by Wesley Fair, TCU found itself traveling 14-7 at the half. Hoover later tried to rally the offense, engineering a lightning-fast 7-play, 75-yard drive that was capped by a 2-yard touchdown to Chase Curtis. But each time the Frogs got closer, K-State had an answer. First with a 17-yard touchdown pass from Avery Johnson to Garrett Oakley, then with a 12-yard strike to Jaren Bradley to extend the lead to 35-14. Johnson was efficient, though, finishing 16-26 for 198 yards and 3 touchdowns, all while K-State's defense kept Hoover under constant pressure. Hoover's late 85-yard bomb to Eric McAllister provided a highlight, but Purnell's second interception in TCU territory sealed the game and set up a final Kansas State field goal. The Horned Frogs will return home to face Baylor this week, and they'll need to find some answers fast before this midseason slump turns into a full-blown spiral. And things don't get easier for the Horned Frogs, of course, after you face Baylor just to the south. This has been a roller coaster of a season so far for the Horned Frogs. I don't see much light on the horizon. This is not a team that seems to be able to overcome adversity. And usually that adversity is caused by themselves. So it's hard to pick yourself up and dust yourself off when you're the one that keeps knocking yourself down. So TCU will look for better things, certainly against Baylor next week. Now, the other team out of our grouping here in Texas that had big hopes for a win, undefeated, and maybe the marquee matchup that was, in the state of Texas here, I don't know, at least here in North Texas, were those North Texas Mean Green. However, in a big matchup against South Florida, number 24 South Florida comes into town, into Denton, as North Texas looked to go 6-0 for the first time since 1989. It was a huge marquee matchup. It was billed as such. And I really thought that we would see this game go really the way it went in the first half, right? But North Texas gets crashed back to earth as two turnovers really doomed the Mean Green in a blowout, 63-36 against USF. And it was supposed to be a statement night in Denton, a national showcase for a red-hot North Texas team. They canceled classes for the students at North Texas there in Denton all day on Friday so that they would have time to tailgate, get their affairs in order, get to the stadium early. And what a scene it was, too, there at Datku Stadium. Just full. I don't know that I'd ever seen that stadium that full before. It was a great sight to see. And, UNT looked pretty poised early. They traded punches with the Bulls. You get to halftime, you're tied 21-21 after a muffed punt led to a late USF touchdown. You were supposed to walk into the half with a 21-14 lead before that huge mistake just before the half. But then that second half quickly spiraled into disaster, as that mistake right before the half set the tone for the entire second half as the Bulls exploded for 3 touchdowns in just over 3 minutes, capitalizing on North Texas's giveaways to blow the game wide open. Byron Brown was unstoppable. He threw for 245 yards and 3 touchdowns. He also rushed for 82 yards and 2 more scores. It marked his second straight 5-touchdown game as the Bulls piled up 580 yards with their defense forcing 5 turnovers, including a 34-yard fumble return that really buried North Texas midway through the third quarter. They really had no answer after that early spurt there in the first half, or the second half, rather, of USF. The Mean Green, of course, you still have Drew Mestemaker. He hadn't thrown an interception all season long. Well, that did not last as he threw 3 all night, despite finishing 30 of 46 for 326 yards and 2 touchdowns. It was a sellout crowd. As I mentioned, 31,386 was the announced attendance, and that crowd was electric very, very early. But the crowd thinned out there in the second half as USF cruised to its 5th straight win. North Texas now faces UTSA on October 18th, hoping to prove that Friday's collapse was just a one-night nightmare and not an unraveling of the rest of the season. So think good thoughts for North Texas, those Mean Green, as they look to put this behind them after facing USF. Again, it was a fun game to watch in the first half, but things got out of hand very, very quickly there very early in the third quarter, and North Texas just had no answer, just with too many mistakes. Seems to be the theme in the losses, even with TCU here. But let's get to some of the good news, because we had some teams that looked very, very good this week. And let's start with the team, the big game, the biggest build game probably in the state of Texas, even after I said that North Texas was, because we had action in the Red River rivalry. Say that 3 times really fast. I still liked it when it was the Red River shootout. It seems like it was easier to say. But you had the annual meeting of the Texas Longhorns and the Oklahoma Sooners there at the Cotton Bowl in Fair Park during the State Fair of Texas. And while we've heard reports of the attendance at the State Fair of Texas being down due to what many consider overpriced tickets and concessions and events and activities, there was no shortage of red, or I guess it's crimson and burnt orange at the Cotton Bowl, as that place was packed to the hilt, as it always is for this game. Texas, coming off the loss to Florida, needed a bounce-back game, not just as a team, but for Arch Manning, who still is trying to figure out the offense behind an underperforming offensive line that he has struggled behind all season long against good opponents. Again, I don't want to call back to the 55-0 Sam Houston State fiasco, as everyone announced Arch is back after that win, and then they roll into Florida and get slobber knocked. But you do roll into Dallas and beat maybe an overrated number 6 Oklahoma, but a number 6 Oklahoma nonetheless. As the Golden Hat now is staying in Austin behind a breakout performance from Arch Manning and a game-breaking punt return from Ryan Niblett. Texas takes down number 6 Oklahoma 23-6 on Saturday at the Cotton Bowl, snapping the Sooners' perfect season and reviving its own college football playoff hopes. As narrow as those college football playoff hopes are, they're still alive down in Austin. Arch Manning was sharp. He was steady, completed 21 of 27 passes for 166 yards, including a go-ahead 12-yard touchdown strike to DeAndre Moore Jr. early in the third quarter, a drive that flipped the tone of the game. The Longhorns trailed 6-0 early before controlling the second half, led by a defense that forced 3 interceptions and held Oklahoma to just 258 yards. Malik Muhammad picked off 2 passes, including a red zone interception at the end of the first half that Coach Sark called a momentum-changing play, and boy, howdy, that's the understatement of the weekend. Ryan Niblett delivered the knockout blow midway through the fourth quarter, returning a punt 75 yards up the sideline, bouncing off teammate Marshall Landwehr before sprinting to the end zone for a 20-6 lead. And that was really the strike that put the game out of reach for Oklahoma. I think at that point, John Mateer and the Sooners still hadn't really figured out what had hit them, as nobody expected to see that type of offense from the Longhorns against, I don't know, maybe an overrated Sooners defense, although they'd performed pretty admirably throughout the season. I don't know that we really knew what we had with the Sooners offensively or defensively. Of course, he had a banged-up John Mateer who's returning from that thumb surgery. Maybe too soon. Mateer did not have the game I don't think that he thought he would. But after that Niblett punt return, it was pretty much church for the Sooners. Mateer played again just 17 days after surgery on his throwing hand. He went 20 of 38, 202 yards, and 3 interceptions, and later admitted, of course, that he just did not play well enough. Guess what, John? We all watched it. We all saw it. We know. Mason Shipley added 3 field goals from 22, 48, and 39 yards, helping the Longhorns retain the Golden Hat for a second straight year. The win, of course, will do well for the Longhorns, put them back in the college football playoff conversation. Maybe more importantly, it proved Sark's team can respond to adversity for the first time this year. They did punch back here against a feisty Oklahoma team that, of course, most predicted to win. But I think Texas showed a lot of grit. I still don't like the way the offensive line played. I still think you need to see more from that. I still think you need to see Arch, although he no doubt gained a ton of confidence. We need to see if that's going to carry over to next week for the Longhorns for sure. So big showing by the Longhorns. Was that going to be matched by the Red Raiders? Well, it was. Cameron Dickey had the game of his life. Will Hammond had to step up as the number 9 Texas Tech Red Raiders just crushed Kansas 42-17. I think the Red Raiders now have proved that they're built for chaos and they're built for championships because they're certainly on their way to the Big 12 title game here, if we can say that. It's still early, but they certainly look like they're trending in that direction. They lost Baron Morton to a leg injury in the second quarter. Did not stop the steamrolling offense out in Lubbock. Behind a record-setting ground game and a breakout performance from Cameron Dickey, he was unstoppable. 263 yards and 2 touchdowns on the ground, including a 71-yard sprint on the first play of the game. He also added a 55-yarder in the fourth quarter that pretty much sealed the deal for the Red Raiders. Tech piled up 372 rushing yards and never looked back, even as the Jayhawks clawed back from a 21-0 hole to make it 21-17 by the half. Redshirt freshman quarterback Will Hammond had to replace Morton. Started kind of slow. He threw a pick there early on, but he settled in after the break, scored 2 rushing touchdowns, including a 20-yard scamper to open the second half. This was the third time this season that Hammond has been called in for now for an injured Morton. He's battled a knee issue. He had a head injury early in the year, but Hammond has been strong every time he has had to appear. Kansas moved the ball pretty early behind quarterback Jalen Daniels, who had 228 passing yards and 2 touchdowns, but the Tech defense turned ferocious after halftime, and I don't know that anyone has ever uttered those words about a Texas Tech defense. But as I've mentioned on this show and over on our Texas Tech Red Raiders Daily Blitz podcast, this thing's built different this year. NIL and the transfer portal has done the Red Raiders well, as their defense is just ridiculous this season, and they finally have the defense to match the high-powered offense, and we're seeing the result of that in just about every game this season. The Red Raiders sacked Daniels 8 times, with David Bailey accounting for 3 of those. They forced 5 second-half punts as the Jayhawks' momentum disappeared after they had narrowed that first half lead from 21-0 to 21-17. So with the win, Texas Tech stays undefeated. They're climbing in the AP top 10 for the first time since 2013, especially after Oregon's loss to Indiana earlier in the day. Coming up next for the Red Raiders, it is number 21 Arizona State, in another chance for the Red Raiders to prove that they're not just hot, but they're for real. Stay in the Dallas area, excuse me, as we'll save the Aggies, my Aggies, for last. But another impressive performance from SMU with a 19th straight ACC conference win, as the message from the Mustangs to the ACC should by now be loud and clear that they belong there. Behind a pair of electrifying touchdowns from Chris Johnson Jr. and a stifling defensive effort, the Mustangs rolled past Stanford 34-10 on Saturday at Gerald J. Ford Stadium. Again, it's its 19th consecutive regular season conference victory. Of course, the Miami transfer Johnson made the highlight reel twice. He had an 87-yard touchdown run and later a 42-yard catch and run from quarterback Kevin Jennings. Jennings was 22 of 30 for 247 yards and 2 touchdowns. Linebacker Justin Medlock sealed the win with a 96-yard interception return in the fourth quarter, his second score in as many weeks. Stanford kept it close before halftime as a 75-yard drive, capped by a 14-yard touchdown pass to C.J. Williams, narrowed the lead. But the Cardinal could not overcome 6 sacks and Medlock's pick 6 down the stretch. With the win, the SMU Mustangs remain unbeaten in regular season conference play since joining the ACC last year. And they will look to extend their streak at a struggling Clemson team that is not the Clemson team we thought we were going to see before the season started. Of course, they were preseason number 4, and we're not able to live up to that, as we had a couple of teams that were not able to live up to their preseason rankings, of course, the Longhorns being one of those. But all in all, a good showing by the Mustangs at home, and we'll see what they can put together against Clemson. The big game of the week, at least for me, were the Texas A&M Aggies remaining perfect to roll to 6-0 over Florida, the team that had just knocked off the Texas Longhorns the week before. And once again, I say it every week, whether it's right here or on the Texas A&M Aggies Daily Blitz on FanStream Sports, that Marcel Reed continues to lead this team like a seasoned veteran as the Aggies keep finding ways to win. And Saturday night, it came with another statement. Reed's poise, his playmaking led the charge with that 34-17 victory. The Aggies are now 6-0 for the first time since 2016. Reed was in control all night. He threw for 234 yards and a touchdown. He added another score on the ground. The Aggies came out swinging with 2 touchdowns on its first 3 possessions, capped by Le'Veon Moss's 22-yard run early in the second quarter. Moss exited before halftime with an apparent ankle injury, and that brought in Reuben Owens to finish the job with 51 yards rushing and a late 2-yard touchdown that sealed the game. Florida briefly showed some signs of life. They tied the game twice in the first quarter and cut the lead to 24-17 late in the third after a 45-yard field goal, but the Gators and head coach Billy Napier could not sustain drives when it mattered. The Aggies defense was just too much. Napier now falls to 0-14 on the road against ranked teams, as turnovers and red zone miscues proved costly once again for the Gators. And I think it's safe to say the seat is getting warmer and warmer and warmer in Billy Napier's office, and it probably should. Don't know that he'll make it to the end of the season. The state of Florida now with the Gators and even with Florida State, Mike Norvell's seat getting hotter and hotter and hotter as they lose to Pitt this week. But could be some job openings coming up in the Sunshine State maybe before the end of the season. And the Aggies continue to roll. Dayon Hayes' strip sack and fumble set up the Aggies' final points, while the defense bottled up DJ Lagway, who threw for 245 yards and 2 touchdowns. But he had no answer for the Aggies' defense. Of course, with Oregon's loss earlier in the day, the Aggies climbing in the standings are at number 4. And this is the way that we've seen the Aggies grind out wins all season. And I've said it over and over again. This Aggies team is different. This is not R.C. Slocum's Aggies team. This is not Jimbo Fisher's Aggies team. This is not Kevin Sumlin's Aggies team. This is not Mike Sherman's Aggies team. This one's built different under Mike Elko, and they seem to be finding ways to win these games that in the past, under past regimes, and even as recently as Jimbo Fisher, they have just found ways to lose, whether it's at home or on the road. The game is against Mississippi State. I thought had every chance to be an Aggies loss, but this team, again, is built differently. Same thing with this Florida Gators game. The Aggies had every opportunity to let the Gators back into it, but this defense keeps rolling. The offense keeps rolling, and it's different. It's just built different, and if you're not an Aggies fan and you're listening to this every week, then I apologize. As soon as the Longhorns start doing something, then I'll praise them too. Praised them for a win this week, didn't I? And again, if you're not new to the program, then you know I'm an Arch Manning fan, being a fan of the Manning family, my time in New Orleans. But I'm ready to praise Arch. I'm ready to praise the Longhorns when they do something that's praiseworthy. And yeah, they got a win over Oklahoma. It is what it is. It was a big win for the program. It's a big win for the Aggies program this week against Florida. And I can't wait to see what these Texas-based college teams can come up with here on the Pigskin and Burnt Ends. We will get into some more college football next week right here on FanStream Sports and the College Gridiron Coast to Coast Network. Until next time, boys and girls, we'll see you.